I was kicked out of my house at 18. Now that I've inherited millions from my grandfather, my parents came back acting like nothing happened, demanding all the money. Before continuing the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you won't miss more stories, and leave your like on the video. I sat in the leather chair, my hands gripping the armrests so tight my knuckles turned white. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and expensive wood polish. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat and adjusted his reading glasses. The testament of my grandfather spread across his mahogany desk. I hadn't expected anyone else to be here. When the secretary called last week saying I needed to come in for the reading of Grandpa Joe's will, I assumed it would just be me. After all, I was the only one who visited him during those last 2 years. The only one who sat by his hospital bed reading him the sports section. But there they were. My mother perched on the edge of her seat, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, probably bought specifically for this occasion. My father stood by the window, hands in his pockets, that same stern expression he always wore. And my brother, scrolling through his phone like he had somewhere better to be. 9 years. It had been 9 years since they kicked me out. My mother caught my eye and smiled. It was the kind of smile you'd give a stranger. Polite, empty, meaningless. "Sweetheart," she said, and the word felt like broken glass in my ears. "You look so grown up. We've missed you." I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say to that? That I'd missed sleeping in my car that first winter? That I'd missed eating ramen noodles for 3 months straight because I couldn't afford anything else? Mr. Henderson began reading. I tried to focus on his words, but my mind kept wandering back to that day when I was 18. The day my father told me I was a disappointment. The day my mother packed my things in garbage bags. The day my brother watched from his bedroom window as I drove away, not even bothering to wave goodbye. To my granddaughter, Mr. Henderson's voice cut through my thoughts. I leave the sum of $3,500,000 along with my investment portfolio and the property on Maple Street. The room went silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My mother's smile faltered. My father turned from the window, his face unreadable. My brother finally looked up from his phone. "There must be some mistake," my father said, his voice tight and controlled. "What about the rest of the family?" Mr. Henderson looked at him over his glasses. "There is no mistake. Mr. Joseph Carter was very clear about his wishes. He also left specific instructions that I am to handle all financial matters directly with his granddaughter. No one else has any claim to this inheritance." I watched my mother's face transform. The polite smile melted away, replaced by something harder, more calculating. She reached over and touched my arm, and I flinched. "Of course, honey. This is wonderful news. Your grandfather always had such faith in you, but this is a lot of money for someone your age. Your father and I would be happy to help you manage it. We have experience with these things." Experience. The word almost made me laugh. The last time they'd helped me with anything, I was 17, and they'd promised to co-sign for my college loans. Then they changed their minds 2 weeks before the semester started, saying they needed to focus their resources on my brother's education instead. He was getting his MBA. I was working at a diner. "That won't be necessary," I heard myself say. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. My brother finally spoke up. "Come on. Don't be stupid about this. Mom's right. You don't know anything about investments or taxes. You'll blow through it in a year." The same brother who got a new car for his 16th birthday while I took the bus. The same brother who got a trip to Europe after high school, while I got a suitcase and directions to the nearest homeless shelter. Mr. Henderson closed the file. "The estate is settled. I'll be in touch within the week to begin the transfer process." He looked directly at me. "Your grandfather also left you a letter. I'll have my assistant bring it." As we filed out of the office, my mother linked her arm through mine like we were old friends. "We should all have dinner tonight. There's so much to catch up on. Your father has some excellent investment advisors we could introduce you to." I pulled my arm away. "I need to think." "Of course, sweetheart. Take all the time you need." That smile again. "We're just so glad to have you back in our lives. Family is everything, isn't it?" I walked to my car, a used Toyota I'd bought 3 years ago after saving every spare dollar, and sat in the driver's seat with the door locked. Through the windshield, I could see them standing in a tight circle in the parking lot. My mother was gesturing animatedly. My father had his phone out. My brother was shaking his head. They were planning something. I could feel it in my bones, the same way I'd felt it 9 years ago when I sensed the storm coming but couldn't do anything to stop it. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. "We need to talk. This doesn't have to be complicated." I deleted it without responding and drove away, watching them disappear in my rearview mirror. The envelope from Mr. Henderson sat on my passenger seat, the letter from Grandpa Joe. I wasn't ready to open it yet. 9 years ago, they'd thrown me away like I was nothing. Now, suddenly, I was family again. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the envelope sitting on my kitchen counter, Grandpa Joe's handwriting on the front. But my mind kept drifting further back, to memories I'd spent years trying to bury. I was 7 when I first noticed it. My brother got the bigger bedroom. I got the converted storage room. When I asked why, my mother said he needed more space. He was older. He was more important. At 10, I made the honor roll. My parents took us out to dinner to celebrate my brother's acceptance into the gifted program. My report card sat in my backpack, unseen. When I tried to show it to my father, he patted my head and turned back to discussing my brother's future. By 13, I'd stopped trying. My brother got a new laptop for his birthday. I got a card with $20. He got driving lessons from our father. I taught myself using YouTube videos in the school parking lot. The day I turned 18 started normal enough. I came downstairs for breakfast. My mother was at the kitchen table. My father was reading the newspaper. My brother was eating cereal, dressed in the designer clothes they'd bought him for college. "We need to talk," my father said without looking up. I remember my stomach dropping. I'd learned to recognize that tone. "You're an adult now," he continued. "It's time you learn to stand on your own feet. Your brother needed our support to reach his potential. You've always been more independent." My mother nodded along, not meeting my eyes. "We've done our duty. 18 years. But we can't keep supporting you when your brother still has graduate school ahead." "What are you saying?" "You need to move out," my father said. "We've packed your things. There are boxes in the garage. Not suitcases. Boxes." My brother kept eating his cereal, the spoon scraping against the bowl. "But I'm still in high school," I said. "I graduate in 2 months." "You can finish from wherever you end up," my mother said, her back to me. "You're resourceful." I looked at my brother, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He'd always been quiet, but we were siblings. Surely he'd see how wrong this was. He finally looked up. "It's probably for the best. You guys never really got along anyway." That hurt worse than anything my parents had said. I went to the garage. 8 cardboard boxes, my entire life packed away. My clothes, my books, my laptop, the one I'd bought myself by working at the grocery store. Nothing they'd given me. I loaded the boxes into my Honda. My mother watched from the kitchen window. My father had already left. My brother's door was closed. I sat in the driver's seat, hands shaking, trying to figure out where to go. I had $300 in my bank account. No friends close enough to take me in. No other family except Grandpa Joe. I drove to his house, the tears finally coming. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside. What did they do? I told him everything. His jaw got tighter with each word. When I finished, he made me tea and sat across from me. "You can stay here," he said. "As long as you need. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden. You're my granddaughter." He squeezed my hand. "And you're worth 10 of your brother. Always have been." I stayed with Grandpa Joe for 3 months. He helped me finish high school, drove me to graduation when my parents didn't show. He co-signed for my first apartment, helped me apply for financial aid, encouraged me when I wanted to give up. "They'll regret this," he told me once. Maybe not today, maybe not for years, but they will. And when they do, remember, you didn't need them to succeed. You did this yourself. I moved out when I got a job at a call center. Grandpa Joe visited my apartment, brought me a framed photo of us at my graduation. It still hung in my living room. I visited him every week until he got sick. Then I visited every day. I was there when he died, holding his hand, telling him about my promotion. He smiled and said he was proud of me. Those were his last words. My parents didn't come to the funeral. My brother sent flowers with a generic card. Now at 3 in the morning, I finally opened the envelope. Grandpa Joe's handwriting was shaky but clear. "My dear girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I can't be there to see what comes next, but I know you're strong enough to handle it. Your parents will come back. They'll pretend the past never happened. They'll want what I've left you. Don't let them take it. You earned this, not by being born into the family, but by being the only one who gave a damn. You're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're going to be extraordinary. Love, Grandpa Joe." I read it 3 times, my vision blurring. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. My phone buzzed. Another text from my brother. Seriously, we need to talk. Call me. I turned off my phone and went to bed. Tomorrow I'd start dealing with this. Tonight I just wanted to remember what it felt like to be loved unconditionally by the one person who never gave up on me. The calls started the next morning. 3 missed calls from my mother, 5 texts from my brother, 2 voicemails from my father. I deleted them all without listening. At work, I tried to focus, but my phone kept buzzing. Finally, I stepped outside to take my brother's call. Finally, he said. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I've been busy. Look, I know things were complicated, but that's in the past. We're family. The inheritance, $3.5 million. You're going to need help managing it. Dad knows some really good financial advisors. I leaned against the brick wall. I don't need help. Don't be stubborn. You've never dealt with this kind of money. If you screw this up, I'll handle it myself. Are you seriously still mad about what happened when you were 18? That was 9 years ago. People change. Do they? Yes. Mom feels terrible. She's been saying so all week. Interesting, considering she hasn't said a word to me directly. His voice got sharper. Grandpa Joe would want us to work together. He wouldn't want you pushing the family away. That made me laugh. You didn't even go to his funeral. I sent flowers. How generous. Look, I'm trying here. The least you could do is not be a bitch about it. I hung up. That evening, I came home to find my brother sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. How did you know where I live? Mom still has your address from an old Christmas card. I tried to move past him. He blocked my path. Not aggressively, but firmly. 5 minutes. I crossed my arms. Talk. This money could change all our lives. Mom and Dad don't have much saved for retirement. I've got student loans. We could help each other. Help each other? Or help yourselves? Why does it have to be like that? We're family. You keep saying that word like it means something. His jaw tightened. I know you're angry, but holding on to that anger isn't going to help anyone. Grandpa Joe would want you to use this to bring the family back together. He left me that money because I was the only one who cared about him. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you visited him before he got sick? He looked away. I was busy with work. I was busy too. I still made time. So what? You want me to apologize? Fine. I'm sorry. I should have been there more. But we can't change the past. We can only move forward. I unlocked my building door. I need to think. Alone. Wait. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Mom wanted me to give you this. It's from Dad. A proposal for how we could structure things. I took the envelope but didn't open it. I'll look at it. That's all we're asking. Just consider it. Inside my apartment, I stared at the envelope. Part of me wanted to throw it away. But I opened it. The proposal was typed, professional looking. It outlined a plan where I would put the inheritance into a family trust. My father would manage investments. My mother would handle charitable giving. My brother would oversee tax planning. I would receive a monthly allowance. An allowance. From my own money. The document used words like collective benefit and family unity. It was dated 3 days after Grandpa Joe's funeral. They'd been planning this before they knew what was in the will. My phone rang. My mother. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sweetheart, she said, false warmth in her voice. Your brother said he gave you our proposal. Your father spent days working on it. I haven't decided anything. Of course not. Take your time. But we'd love to have you over for dinner this weekend. Just family. We could talk about everything. I'm busy this weekend. Next weekend, then. We're flexible. We just miss you so much. 9 years, I thought. 9 years since you threw me out. I'll think about it. That's all we ask. Oh, and honey? Mr. Henderson mentioned you'd be coming in to sign papers next week. Your father thought he might come with you, just to make sure everything is in order. I can handle it myself. Pause. Of course you can. We just want to support you. That's what family does. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness. The proposal sat on my coffee table with its neat bullet points and professional language. They'd thought of everything, except asking what I wanted. I called Mr. Henderson's office and left a message asking if he could recommend a financial advisor, someone with no connection to my family. Then I threw my parents' proposal in the trash. 2 weeks later, Mr. Henderson called me at work. His voice was tight but professional. We have a situation. Can you come to my office this afternoon? My stomach dropped. What kind of situation? I'd rather discuss it in person. 3 o'clock? I left work early. The whole drive, my hands shook on the steering wheel. Mr. Henderson had documents spread across his desk. Please, sit down. What happened? Yesterday, someone attempted to access your grandfather's estate accounts. They presented themselves as your legal representative, claiming power of attorney. The room tilted. What? The bank flagged it immediately. Your grandfather's will requires your direct signature in person with ID. No exceptions. Who was it? Your father. He had what appeared to be a notarized document claiming you'd granted him power of attorney due to mental incapacity and inexperience. I felt sick. I never signed anything. I know. The notary stamp was fake. We've reported it to the authorities. He paused. There's more. This morning, we received a letter from an attorney representing your parents. They're claiming your grandfather was unduly influenced. They're contesting the will. My father had tried to steal from me. And when that failed, they were taking a different approach. What do I do? Get your own attorney. Document everything, every call, text, interaction, and don't engage with them directly. Everything goes through lawyers now. He slid a business card across the desk. Patricia Chen, estate litigation attorney. How long will this take? Months, probably. Your grandfather anticipated this, which is why he was so careful with documentation. But they're going to make it difficult. I left his office numb. In my car, I checked my phone. 17 missed calls from my family. I'd blocked their numbers, but they'd started using different phones. An email from my brother. I don't know what Henderson told you, but you need to hear our side. Dad was only trying to help. We're family. We don't need lawyers between us. I deleted it. That night, I called Patricia Chen and scheduled an appointment. The next morning, my car wouldn't start. Dead battery. When the mechanic looked, he frowned. Weird. Your battery cables are loose. Really loose. Almost like someone disconnected them partway. My brother had been here 2 weeks ago. He'd known which car was mine. At Patricia Chen's office, I told her everything. She took notes, her expression neutral. This is a clear pattern of harassment and attempted fraud, she said. The fake power of attorney alone is serious. Combined with the will contest and escalating behavior, we have options. What kind of options? Restraining order, criminal charges for fraud, motion to dismiss their will contest as frivolous and demand they pay your legal fees. Will that work? The evidence is overwhelmingly in your favor. Your grandfather left an incredible paper trail. Medical records, witness statements, security footage, written declarations. Unless they have evidence we don't know about, this won't last long. She leaned forward. But I need you prepared. This will get ugly. They'll say terrible things about you in legal documents. Can you handle that? I thought about sleeping in my car at 18, working double shifts while finishing my degree online, sitting by Grandpa Joe's hospital bed while my parents pretended I didn't exist. Yes, I said. I can handle it. Good. Let's get to work. Patricia filed our responses. The restraining order included every text, voicemail, unwanted visit. The motion to dismiss included Mr. Henderson's documentation and expert testimony. My parents' lawyer fired back with a document claiming I'd manipulated an elderly man, isolated him from family, poisoned him against his children. They said Grandpa Joe had been depressed and vulnerable, easy prey. Reading it made me physically ill. Patricia said not to take it personally, legal strategy, not truth, but it felt personal. Then came subpoenas, my bank records, employment history, medical records. They were fishing for anything to use against me. Patricia assured me it was normal. They won't find anything because there's nothing to find. She was right. My records showed a woman who worked hard, paid bills, lived responsibly, but the invasion felt violating. My mother left one final voicemail before the restraining order took effect. Her voice was ice. You're making a terrible mistake. We're your family. When this is over and you have nothing, don't come crawling back to us. I saved the recording and sent it to Patricia. Perfect, she said. This shows they know they're going to lose. I wanted to believe her, but lying in bed at night, I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow they'd find a way to win. They always did. The whispers started at the grocery store. I noticed people staring, then quickly looking away. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Then I heard fragments of conversations that stopped when I got close. My coworker texted me, "Hey, did you see the neighborhood Facebook group? There are some posts about you." I checked. Anonymous accounts claiming I'd abandoned my family for years, only to swoop in when my grandfather was dying. Posts calling me a gold digger, a manipulator. Comments from people I'd never met, calling me greedy and heartless. Someone had posted my photo with the caption, "This woman conned an elderly man out of millions. Shame on her." Within days, the damage spread everywhere. The woman at my usual coffee shop stopped making small talk. My gym membership was mysteriously under review. Someone left a note on my car. Karma is coming for you. At work, colleagues who used to chat with me in the break room now made excuses to leave when I entered. My boss pulled me aside. Uncomfortable. We've received some concerning emails about you. I don't believe them, but HR needs to investigate. It's my family, I said. They're trying to destroy my reputation because I won't give them the inheritance. I understand, just keep your head down until this blows over. But it didn't blow over. It got worse. Someone posted a 1-star review on my company's website, claiming I'd provided terrible service and stolen client information. It was completely false, but it was there for everyone to see. My landlord called. I've had complaints from other tenants. Nothing specific, just they're uncomfortable. Is there something going on? My car was keyed again, this time across the hood. Thief. I stopped going to my usual places. The grocery store, the coffee shop, the gym. Every public space felt hostile. People who'd smiled at me for years now looked at me with suspicion or disgust. My phone rang constantly. Blocked numbers, unknown callers. When I answered, it was either silence or whispered insults. You should be ashamed. He trusted you. You're disgusting. I changed my number. Within 2 days, the calls started again. The isolation was crushing. I'd spent 9 years building a life in this community. I had work friends, gym acquaintances, familiar faces at the coffee shop. Not close relationships, but connections. People who knew my name, who smiled when they saw me. Now I had nothing. I was a pariah in my own neighborhood. Patricia documented everything. The posts, the vandalism, the harassment, but it didn't stop. My parents had poisoned the well so thoroughly that people believed them without question. The breaking point came when I ran into someone from Grandpa Joe's church in the parking lot. I'd always liked her. She'd been kind to me at the funeral. "How are you?" I asked, genuinely hoping for a normal interaction. She looked at me with cold eyes. "I know what you did. Your grandfather would be ashamed." She walked away, leaving me standing there, gutted. That night, I sat in my apartment with all the lights off, curtains closed. The walls felt like they were closing in. Every sound made me jump. Was it another vandal? Another harassing call? I thought about Grandpa Joe's letter, about being strong. But I didn't feel strong. I felt crushed under the weight of lies I couldn't fight fast enough. My phone buzzed. An email from my mother, from a new address I hadn't blocked yet. "You've brought this on yourself. All you had to do was share. Instead, you chose greed over family. Now you see what it costs to stand alone. It's not too late to fix this. Call me." I deleted it, but the words stuck. Was she right? Had I brought this on myself by refusing to compromise? No. I caught myself spiraling. That's what they wanted, for me to doubt myself, to question my own worth. I pulled out Grandpa Joe's letter and read it again, my vision blurring with tears. Don't let them take it. You earned this. But it was hard to remember why any of this mattered when I felt so completely alone, when my entire world had turned against me based on lies. I looked at my phone, at all the blocked numbers, the deleted messages, the harassment that wouldn't stop. Then I looked at my apartment, my safe space that no longer felt safe. For the first time since this started, I wondered if I could actually survive this. If maybe they'd finally found a way to break me. I fell asleep on the couch, too exhausted to move, Grandpa Joe's letter still clutched in my hand. I woke up on the couch, neck stiff, head pounding. Grandpa Joe's letter had fallen to the floor. As I picked it up, I noticed another envelope in the box of his things. This one was older, yellowed. My name in Grandpa Joe's younger handwriting. The letter was dated 8 years ago. "My dear girl, I'm writing this because I know what your parents are capable of. When I'm gone, they'll come for what I leave you. They'll try to manipulate you, guilt you, break you down. But I know something they don't. You're stronger than all of them combined. You survived being thrown away at 18. You built a life with nothing. So when things get dark, remember, you didn't need them then. You don't need them now. I've made sure you have everything you need to fight back. The documentation, the legal protections, the money. But the real weapon is inside you. You've already survived the worst thing they could do. Rejection by the people who should have loved you most. Everything else is just noise. Trust yourself. Trust the plan I've put in place. I'm proud of you. Always have been. Always will be. Love, Grandpa Joe." I read it 3 times. He'd known. Years ago, he'd known exactly what would happen. Something inside me shifted. The crushing weight lifted, replaced by determination. I called Patricia. "Tell me about the other protections in the will." You've been reading something. Another letter from Grandpa Joe. He said he had a plan. He did. The will has clauses that activate under conditions. If your parents are found guilty of fraud or harassment, they're automatically barred from contesting the will, permanently. If they continue defamation after being warned, they're liable for triple damages. If they attempt illegal access to funds, they forfeit any potential claim forever. Your grandfather built legal traps. Each one they trigger makes their position worse. Can we use them? We have enough evidence. The fake power of attorney triggered the first trap. The harassment and defamation triggered the second. We can file now. Then let's do it. Over the next days, I stopped hiding. I went back to my coffee shop. When the barista gave me a cold look, I met her eyes and ordered calmly. I went to the gym, the grocery store, the park. People stared. People whispered. But I didn't run. I also started building an active case. Screenshots of every false post with timestamps, recordings of threatening calls transcribed, photos of vandalism with police reports, witness statements from everyone approached by my family. The woman from Grandpa Joe's church called. Your mother approached me 3 weeks ago. She asked me to post negative things about you online, offered to pay me $500. I said no, but I know 4 others who said yes. Would you testify to that? Yes. I'm sorry I was cold before. Thank you for telling me now. One by one, the truth emerged. The coffee shop owner admitted my father offered him money to refuse my business. My landlord confessed he'd received threatening calls. The person who posted the fake review, paid by my brother. The campaign had been funded, coordinated, systematic. Patricia filed our countersuit. Defamation with documented damages, criminal harassment with coordination evidence, attempted fraud, civil conspiracy. We asked for compensatory damages, punitive damages, and a permanent restraining order. We invoked every protective clause in Grandpa Joe's will. My parents' lawyer tried to dismiss it as a family dispute. Patricia presented our evidence. Hours of documentation, 37 witnesses, financial records showing payments to harassers, phone records proving coordination. The judge reviewed it in silence for 10 minutes. Then she looked up. This goes beyond a family dispute. This is coordinated harassment and defamation. I'm ordering a full evidentiary hearing, and I'm granting a preliminary restraining order effective immediately. My parents' lawyer looked stunned. Walking out, Patricia was smiling. They just realized they're in real trouble. That night, I felt clear, focused. I understood what Grandpa Joe had done. He hadn't just protected my inheritance. He'd given me tools to fight people who'd spent my life making me feel powerless. Every clause in the will, every document prepared, every legal protection established, all designed to turn their tactics against them. I looked at both letters, now taped to my refrigerator. Tomorrow we'd prepare for the hearing, but tonight, for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. Because I finally understood. I wasn't fighting alone. Grandpa Joe was still protecting me, still believing in me, and he'd made sure I had everything I needed to win. With Patricia's help, I hired a financial advisor, someone Mr. Henderson recommended who had no connection to my family. Her name was Joan, a woman in her 50s, who'd built her career managing inheritances and trusts. First rule, she said at our first meeting, don't touch the principal for at least 6 months. Let's set up a structure that protects you. We created a diversified investment portfolio. Nothing flashy, nothing risky. Index funds, bonds, some real estate investments. The kind of boring, steady growth that would ensure I'd never worry about money again. You could live comfortably on the interest alone, Joan said, without ever touching the principal. That felt surreal. 9 years ago, I was sleeping in my car. Now I had financial security for life. But I didn't want to just sit on the money. I wanted to build something. I started documenting everything my family did, not just for the legal case, but methodically. I created a detailed timeline, every call, every text, every act of vandalism, every lie they spread. I saved screenshots, made backups, organized everything in folders. Patricia was impressed. This is better documentation than most lawyers provide. At work, after HR cleared me, I asked for more responsibility. My boss, who felt guilty about the investigation, was happy to oblige. I took on a major project, streamlining our supply chain logistics. It was complex, demanding work that required my full attention. Exactly what I needed. The project kept me busy for weeks. I worked late, dove into problems, proved myself all over again. When I presented the final proposal, it would save the company nearly $500,000 annually. My boss approved it immediately. I'm recommending you for senior coordinator. You've earned it. The promotion came with a significant raise. Not that I needed the money anymore, but it felt good to earn it on my own merit. I also started looking for a new place to live, not because my family was forcing me out, but because I chose to. I wanted something that was entirely mine, untainted by their shadow. I found a small house in a different neighborhood, 2 bedrooms, a yard, a garage, nothing fancy, but it had good bones. I paid cash. The realtor's eyes widened when I said I didn't need a mortgage. That's unusual for someone your age. I got lucky, I said simply. Moving day felt like shedding an old skin. The apartment had been my sanctuary, but it had also been the place where I'd felt most vulnerable during the harassment. This house was a fresh start. I hired movers, wanting to do this right. As they loaded boxes, I found myself smiling. This was my choice, my life, built with my own hands and Grandpa Joe's love. The first night in the new house, I hung Grandpa Joe's photo in the living room, the one from my high school graduation. Then I hung both his letters in my office, framed and protected. This room would be my command center, where I'd manage my money, build my future, and coordinate my defense against my family's legal attacks. Because they weren't giving up. Despite our countersuit, despite the evidence mounting against them, they kept pushing. Their lawyer filed motion after motion, each one more desperate than the last. But now I was ready for them. I created spreadsheets tracking every aspect of my finances. Not because I was paranoid, but because I wanted to prove, to myself and to any judge, that I was handling this responsibly. Every dollar accounted for, every investment justified, every expense reasonable. At night, instead of hiding in the dark, I planned. Joan helped me set up a charitable fund in Grandpa Joe's name. We'd support causes he cared about: veterans services, education scholarships, youth programs. This will also help your case, Joan said. It shows you're honoring his legacy, not just hoarding money. I didn't care about how it looked. I cared that Grandpa Joe's money would keep doing good after he was gone. My coworkers noticed the change in me. I was calmer, more focused. The harassment had been terrible, but I'd come through it stronger. Slowly, carefully, I was rebuilding. Not just my reputation, but my entire life. Brick by brick, choice by choice. The house became a home. I planted flowers in the yard. I bought furniture that I actually liked, not just what I could afford. I created a space that reflected who I was. And every morning I woke up in my own house, looked at Grandpa Joe's photo, and reminded myself, I'd earned this. Every bit of it. Not because I'd inherited money, but because I'd survived. I'd refused to break. I'd kept going when it would have been easier to give up. The inheritance was just money. The real wealth was the strength I'd built over 9 years of standing on my own. And that was something my family could never take away. 3 months after filing our countersuit, I attended a charity event in Grandpa Joe's name. The scholarship fund we'd created was awarding its first grants. I wanted to be there. An older man approached me. He had kind eyes and a firm handshake. You probably don't remember me. I'm Walter Chen. I was your grandfather's attorney before he hired Mr. Henderson. I retired 5 years ago. I'm sorry, we haven't met. We haven't, but your grandfather talked about you constantly. There's something you should know. He pulled me aside. Your grandfather came to me 8 years ago. He wanted to create an inheritance structure that would protect you from your family. We spent months planning it, anticipating every move they might make. You helped him build the traps. Walter smiled. Yes, but there's more. Your grandfather left something else with me, a notebook, detailed strategies for various scenarios. He wanted you to have it, but only after you'd started fighting back on your own. Why wait? Because he wanted you to find your own strength first. Walter handed me a leather-bound notebook. He said you'd know when you needed this. That night, I opened it. Grandpa Joe's handwriting filled every page. It wasn't just legal strategies. It was a playbook. Scenario 1. They try to claim undue influence. Response. Medical records showing my mental competency. Witness statements. Documented history of their neglect. Scenario 2. They attempt to access funds illegally. Response. Report immediately. Press criminal charges. Use as evidence of character. Scenario 3. They launch a smear campaign. Response. Document everything. Let them expose their own cruelty. Use it in court. Page after page. He'd thought of everything, and he'd been right about all of it. The last section was titled, Your Allies. Names and contact information for people Grandpa Joe trusted. Financial advisors, attorneys, friends who'd promised to help me if needed. One name jumped out. Thomas Brennan, retired family court judge. A note. Tom saw how your parents treated you at family gatherings. He'll testify if needed. I called. A man answered, voice warm. I've been waiting for your call. Your grandfather asked me years ago if I'd help you when the time came. I said yes without hesitation. You barely know me. I know enough. I saw your parents at your grandfather's 70th birthday party. I watched them ignore you while fawning over your brother. I watched your grandfather's face when he looked at you versus them. That told me everything. Would you really testify? Absolutely. I've already prepared a statement about what I observed. Your grandfather was of sound mind, deeply disappointed in his son and daughter-in-law, and completely clear about his intentions. I'll say all of that under oath. I kept reading the notebook. Grandpa Joe had compiled evidence I didn't know existed. Photos of family gatherings where I was clearly excluded. Emails where my parents asked him for money while refusing to mention me. Records of every time he'd tried to convince them to treat me better. He'd documented their cruelty for years, knowing someday I'd need proof. The final page was a letter. If you're reading this, you've started fighting back. I'm proud of you. I knew you would. This notebook is just insurance. You don't need it to win. You've already won by becoming someone they could never break. But use it anyway. Make them face what they've done, not for revenge, but for justice. And remember, I'm with you every step of the way. Love, Grandpa Joe. I sat there crying, holding this gift. He'd spent years preparing for this battle. Years documenting, planning, building alliances. All to protect me. The next morning, I brought the notebook to Patricia. Her eyes widened as she flipped through it. This is incredible. More evidence than we could have hoped for. Witnesses I didn't know existed. Documentation going back over a decade. She looked up. Your grandfather was meticulous. He knew what they'd do. More than that. He understood exactly how to counter every move. This changes everything. We spent the next week incorporating the new evidence, reaching out to the people Grandpa Joe had listed, organizing photographs and documents chronologically. Each piece painted a clearer picture. My parents had been emotionally abusive for years. They'd gaslit me, excluded me, treated me as less than. And Grandpa Joe had watched it all, documenting their cruelty, waiting for the day I'd need proof. Walter called to check in. How's the notebook? It's perfect. It's everything. Your grandfather spent our last meeting together adding to it. He was in the hospital, weak but determined. He said, Walter, I need to make sure she has ammunition. They're going to come at her with everything. She needs to be ready. That night, I sat in my house, surrounded by evidence of Grandpa Joe's love. The letters, the notebook, the carefully constructed legal protections, the network of people he'd recruited to help me. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. He'd been planning this for years, building an army to protect me, creating a fortress around my future. And now I had everything I needed to finish this fight. The petition arrived on a Tuesday morning. Patricia called me, her voice tight. They've filed for guardianship. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent to manage the inheritance. I felt punched. What? It's a last-ditch effort. They're saying you show signs of mental instability, make irrational financial decisions, need someone to manage your affairs. They want legal control over you and the money. I'm 27. I have a job. I own a house. They're desperate. This is them going all in. They've hired a psychiatrist willing to say you exhibit concerning behavior based on their descriptions. No actual examination. That's insane. It is. But we take it seriously. The hearing is in 3 weeks. My parents were trying to have me declared incompetent. They wanted to take away my autonomy, my rights, not just the money, me. Over the next weeks, we assembled our case. My employer provided records showing excellent job performance, my promotion, my leadership. Joan documented my financial management, every investment sound, every decision reasonable. My doctor provided records showing I was healthy. We gathered character witnesses, co-workers, neighbors, the woman from Grandpa Joe's church, and we prepared to use Grandpa Joe's notebook. Thomas Brennan, the retired judge, was willing to testify about what he'd observed at family gatherings, about my parents' treatment of me. I'll tell the truth, he said, that your grandfather worried about this exact scenario. The day arrived. I dressed professionally. The courtroom was small. My parents sat on one side with their lawyer. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father stared straight ahead. Judge Morrison entered, an older woman with sharp eyes. My parents' lawyer presented their case. My father testified I'd become obsessed with the inheritance, cut off family without reason, made enemies in the community. My mother cried on the stand about how worried she was. My brother claimed I'd threatened him, that I was unstable. Their psychiatrist, who'd never met me, testified that based on descriptions, I exhibited signs of paranoid personality disorder. Then our turn. Joan presented detailed financial records. This is textbook financial management. Conservative, intelligent, well-planned. Nothing irrational here. My boss testified about my work performance. She's one of our best employees. My doctor testified about my health. No indication of mental illness or instability. Then Thomas Brennan. I've known the family for 15 years. I attended family gatherings. The parents consistently favored the son. They ignored her accomplishments, dismissed her, treated her as an afterthought. My parents' lawyer objected. This is irrelevant. It's absolutely relevant, Patricia said. It establishes motive. Judge Morrison nodded. I'll allow it. The grandfather confided in me about his concerns. Brennan continued. He worried his son and daughter-in-law would try to manipulate his granddaughter after his death. He specifically mentioned they might claim incompetence if other methods failed. He said, they'll do anything for that money, even try to have her declared unfit. The courtroom went silent. Patricia presented Grandpa Joe's notebook, the scenarios, the predictions, the evidence of years of emotional abuse. Your Honor, this isn't about mental health. This is about money. The petitioners have tried fraud, harassment, defamation, and now this. Each attempt predicted and documented. This is a pattern of abusive behavior. Finally, I testified. Patricia asked me questions about my life, my job, my finances. I answered clearly, calmly. Then, why do you think your parents filed this petition? Because every other method to get the inheritance has failed. The will is ironclad. Their fraud was caught. Their harassment was documented. They're desperate. They don't think I'm incompetent. They want control of the money. My parents' lawyer cross-examined, trying to rattle me, suggesting I was paranoid. Is it paranoia when you have proof? I asked. When there are witnesses, recordings, when your own parents admit they coordinated a campaign against you? He had no answer. Judge Morrison called a recess. We waited outside for hours. Finally, we were called back. Judge Morrison looked at my parents. I've reviewed all the evidence. I'm denying this petition in its entirety. My mother gasped. Furthermore, I'm appalled by what I've seen. This is not good faith concern about mental health. This is a calculated attempt to seize assets to which you have no legal claim. The evidence shows harassment, fraud, and emotional abuse. I'm making the restraining order permanent. You are barred from any contact with your daughter. Any violation will result in immediate arrest, and I'm awarding attorney's fees. You will pay for her legal costs. She looked at me. You're clearly competent. This case should never have been filed. We walked out into sunshine. Patricia was grinning. That's what we call a complete victory. I felt lighter than I had in months. They'd played their final card, and they'd lost. The final hearing for our countersuit came 6 weeks later. This time, we were on offense. The courtroom was packed. Patricia had made sure the press was there, local reporters following the story, community members who'd seen the truth emerge. My parents arrived looking exhausted. My mother's makeup couldn't hide the dark circles. My father had aged 10 years. My brother kept his head down. Judge Morrison presided again. Patricia stood. Your Honor, we're here to address a coordinated campaign of harassment, defamation, and fraud perpetrated by the petitioners against their own daughter. She presented everything. The timeline. Screenshots of false posts traced to computers accessed by my family. Financial records showing payments to harassers. Recordings of threatening calls. Witness statements. The investigators' footage showing my brother near my car before vandalism. Security showing my mother entering the laundry room before it flooded. The fake power of attorney. Medical records proving Grandpa Joe's sound mind. Witness statements from his doctors, attorney, friends, and Grandpa Joe's notebook, predicting everything they'd done. My parents' lawyer tried to argue it was a misunderstanding. Family conflict blown out of proportion. Patricia destroyed that argument. A misunderstanding doesn't involve fake notary stamps. Family conflict doesn't include paying people to vandalize property. This was calculated, coordinated, and criminal. Witnesses testified. The woman from church about payment offers, the coffee shop owner about bribery attempts, my co-workers about false complaints. Thomas Brennan testified about Grandpa Joe's specific fears. He knew they'd resent his granddaughter for the inheritance. He planned accordingly. Patricia called my father to the stand. Did you attempt to access your daughter's inheritance using a forged power of attorney? Silence. Your Honor, I remind the witness he's under oath. I thought I was acting in her best interest. By forging legal documents? That's fraud. Did you pay people to spread false information? Pause. We were trying to protect her reputation. By destroying it? My father had no answer. My mother cried, tried to play victim, said they were concerned parents. Concerned parents don't vandalize their daughter's property, Patricia said. Concerned parents don't coordinate smear campaigns. My brother seemed most honest, admitting they'd coordinated efforts. Believed they deserved the money. Gone too far. Why did you think you deserved it? Because we're family. Because we needed it more than she did. She was homeless at 18 because your parents threw her out. She worked multiple jobs to survive. She built a life from nothing while you had everything. And you think you needed it more? No answer. Judge Morrison called a recess. When we returned, her expression was grim. I've heard enough. The evidence is overwhelming. The petitioners engaged in fraud, harassment, defamation, and conspiracy. She looked at my parents with disgust. I'm finding in favor of the defendant on all counts. You will pay $300,000 in damages. You will pay all attorney's fees, approximately $70,000. The permanent restraining order remains. And I'm referring the case to the district attorney for possible criminal prosecution. My mother started crying loudly. My father sat frozen. My brother put his head in his hands. Furthermore, I'm invoking the clauses in Joseph Carter's will that permanently bar you from any future claims to his estate. Your actions have triggered every protective provision. You have forfeited any right to contest this will now or ever. She looked at me. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Your grandfather clearly loved you very much. I hope you can move forward in peace. We walked out to camera flashes. Patricia gave a brief statement about justice being served. I said nothing. I just walked to my car and drove home. It was over. Truly over. They'd lost everything, the money, the case, their reputation, potentially their freedom. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. That night, I sat in my living room looking at Grandpa Joe's photo. We won, I whispered. Just like you knew we would. The house was quiet, peaceful, mine. For the first time in months, I felt safe. The news spread fast. The local paper ran a front-page story. Family's coordinated harassment campaign ends in court defeat. The article detailed everything. The fraud attempt, the vandalism, the smear campaign, the guardianship petition. My parents' names were in print. Their actions exposed for everyone to see. Within days, I started hearing about the fallout. My mother's book club asked her to leave. The women who'd been her friends for 20 years suddenly had no time for her. The social circle she'd spent decades building collapsed overnight. My father lost his job. His employer cited integrity concerns after the fraud conviction was made public. At 62, he'd have trouble finding another position. My brother had to move back in with them. His girlfriend had left him after seeing the news coverage. His friends stopped returning his calls. The promising career he'd been building stalled as employers Googled his name and found the court records. The house they'd been so proud of, the one I'd been kicked out of, suddenly felt too big and too expensive. They put it up for sale, but in a small community where everyone knew what they'd done, buyers were scarce. I heard all of this through my attorney, through community gossip that filtered back to me. I didn't seek the information out. I didn't need to. The district attorney decided to pursue criminal charges for the fraud attempt. My father faced potential jail time. Their lawyer was trying to negotiate a plea deal. Meanwhile, my life was moving in the opposite direction. The company promoted me to operations manager. My project had been so successful that they wanted me leading the entire department. The salary was excellent. Not that I needed it, but it felt good to earn it. I started volunteering with the scholarship fund we'd created in Grandpa Joe's name. Meeting the students we were helping, hearing their stories of overcoming adversity, reminded me why all of this had mattered. One girl, 19, had been kicked out by her family for going to college instead of getting married. She reminded me so much of myself at 18 that I ended up mentoring her, helping her navigate the challenges I'd faced alone. My new neighborhood embraced me. People who'd read the news coverage understood what I'd been through. They weren't interested in the lies my parents had spread. They'd seen the truth in black and white. I made friends. Real friends, not just acquaintances. People who invited me to dinner parties, who knocked on my door to borrow sugar, who stopped to chat when we were both working in our yards. I planted a garden. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs. Watching things grow from seeds I'd planted felt therapeutic. 6 months after the final hearing, I ran into someone from my old neighborhood at the grocery store. She looked embarrassed. I owe you an apology, she said. I believed the things your parents said about you. I was horrible to you. I'm so sorry. Thank you for saying that. For what it's worth, no one believes them anymore. Everyone knows what they did. People feel terrible about how they treated you. I nodded. It was nice to hear, but it didn't change what I'd been through. The isolation, the harassment, the fear, those scars were still there, but they were healing. I drove past my parents' house one afternoon. Not intentionally. It was just on the way to somewhere else. I saw the "for sale" sign in the yard, saw how the lawn had gone unmowed, how the paint was peeling. The house that had once seemed so grand now just looked tired and sad. I didn't feel triumphant seeing it. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt nothing. They were strangers to me now, people I used to know, whose choices had led them to this place. My phone buzzed. A text from Joan, my financial advisor. "Your investment portfolio is up 12% this year. You're doing great." I smiled. I was doing great. Not because my parents were suffering, but because I'd built something real, something solid, something that was entirely mine. That evening, I had dinner with friends at my house. We laughed, told stories, enjoyed the meal I'd cooked with vegetables from my garden. This was my life now. This was what Grandpa Joe had wanted for me. Not wealth, not revenge, but peace, community, happiness. Later, after everyone left, I stood in my kitchen doing dishes and looked out the window at my backyard. The garden I'd planted, the house I owned, the life I'd built. I thought about my parents in their declining house, facing criminal charges, ostracized by their community, dealing with the consequences of their choices. I should have felt something: satisfaction, pity, anger. But I felt nothing. They'd lost everything trying to take what was mine. And in losing, they'd freed me completely. I dried the last dish and put it away. Tomorrow, I had a meeting about expanding the scholarship fund. Next week, I was starting a new project at work. Next month, I was taking a vacation. First real vacation I'd ever taken. My life was full, busy, meaningful. And they were no longer part of it. That felt like the real victory. A year after everything ended, I found myself driving through my old neighborhood, not avoiding it anymore, not seeking it out, just passing through on my way home from work. I drove past the house where I'd grown up. The "for sale" sign was still there, faded and leaning. The grass was overgrown. One shutter hung crooked. The house looked abandoned, though I knew my parents and brother still lived there. I slowed down, really looking at it. I remembered being 7 in that house, wondering why my brother got the big bedroom. Being 10 with a report card no one looked at. Being 13, teaching myself to drive because no one would help. Being 18, loading boxes while my mother watched without saying goodbye. Those memories used to hurt. They used to make me feel small and unwanted. Now, looking at that house, I felt free. The house hadn't changed, but I had. I wasn't that little girl anymore, desperate for approval. I wasn't the teenager trying to prove her worth. I wasn't even the scared 27-year-old who'd sat in a lawyer's office while her family circled like vultures. I was someone else now. Someone who'd built a life they tried to destroy. Someone who'd stood up when they tried to knock me down. Someone who'd won, not by becoming like them, but by refusing to. I thought about Grandpa Joe, about his letters, his notebook, his careful planning. He'd known this day would come, when I'd drive past this house and feel nothing but peace. The real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the freedom to define my own worth. I drove on, leaving the house behind. My house was 20 minutes away, a real home, filled with light and laughter and people who cared. Tomorrow, I'd meet with 3 new scholarship recipients. Kids rejected by their families but refusing to give up. I'd tell them what Grandpa Joe told me. "You're stronger than you think. You're going to be okay. Better than okay." Next week, I'd start a new work project, leading a team I'd built. People who respected me, valued my ideas, saw me as competent. Next month, I'd take that vacation, 2 weeks in Italy, solo. Because I could, because I wanted to, because my life was mine. The inheritance gave me financial security, but Grandpa Joe gave me something more valuable. He showed me I was worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth loving. My parents never learned that lesson. They'd spent my life trying to convince me I was less than, and their need to prove me worthless had destroyed them. They'd lost their reputation, their community, their careers. My father had pleaded guilty to fraud. My mother was a pariah. My brother was nearly 30, living in his childhood bedroom, the house they couldn't sell, the friends who'd abandoned them, the shame they couldn't escape. I should have felt vindicated, but I didn't. Their suffering had nothing to do with me anymore. I hadn't destroyed them. They'd destroyed themselves. I'd just refused to be destroyed along with them. I pulled into my driveway and smiled. The porch light was on. The garden was blooming. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Safe, peaceful, mine. Inside, I made dinner, worked on a presentation, watered my plants. Normal things, beautiful things. This was the life Grandpa Joe had fought to give me. Not wealth or revenge or triumph over enemies, just a life. A good one. One where I decided my own value, built my own future, chose my own path. A life where I was enough, had always been enough, would always be enough. I looked at his photo on the wall. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. The smile in the photo seemed to say, I always knew you'd be okay. Better than okay. Extraordinary. And he was right. I turned off the lights and headed to bed. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, unburdened by the past. My parents were no longer part of my story. They'd been a chapter I'd survived, a test I'd passed, a battle I'd won by refusing to become them. Now they were just people I used to know, people whose choices led them down a dark path while I walked toward the light. I didn't forgive them. I didn't need to. Forgiveness would imply their actions still had power over me. They didn't. I was free. And that was the best revenge of all. Living well, without them, without needing them, without even thinking about them, unless I chose to. I fell asleep in my own bed, in my own house, living my own life, finally, completely, triumphantly free.
My best friend rejected me and said she was too much for me to handle, and now that I found someone else and am dating, she's mad at me and calling me a traitor. I've had a best friend for about 6 years. I used to talk to her basically every day. We were really close, and for about the last 3 years I've been telling her I have feelings for her. However, she always brushes it off, makes jokes, says she'll think about it, but never gives me a direct answer. Obviously, this has always been tough for me, especially because she never outright rejected me, but also never accepted me either. Just kind of left me hanging, as if she was still deciding if she wanted to be with me or nothing. Recently, though, I just couldn't take it anymore. We were at a party, and I saw her leave with another guy, and that crushed me. The next day, I asked her to talk, and once again asked her what she felt for me, and if she wanted something serious for real this time. I told her that if she didn't want it, she just needed to say so, and I'd let it go. But I couldn't handle her stringing me along and saying she needed to think about it if she had no intention of being with me. Once again, she told me to stop bringing it up and that she was still thinking about it and didn't want to be rushed. But this time I told her I wanted an answer now. That's when she got mad and said she was way out of my league, that she would never actually want me, and that just being my friend was already more than enough for her, so I should stop bothering her. Of course, that really shook me, because she had never spoken to me like that, and up until that point Shed always acted like she was at least somewhat interested, so I didn't know where that was coming from. I just told her that was fine and left, and although she tried to talk to me normally after that, I responded casually, but was already thinking of cutting contact. So now 3 months later I'm seeing someone. I wasn't even looking for anyone because I was still feeling pretty down about my friend, but this girl just showed up. We started talking, and honestly, she's amazing. We're not officially dating yet, but we're close, and Eve almost completely moved on from the feelings I had for my friend. At this point, I still talk to my friend, but much less often. And surprisingly, she's been giving me a hard time about it, saying I'm forgetting about her, and she doesn't get why I didn't want to throw it in her face that she was unnecessarily rude to me after stringing me along for months. But I definitely felt like it. The problem is, recently I was at a local party with a girl I'm seeing, and my friend saw me. She gave me a strange look, and I didn't understand why. But when I got home and checked my phone, it was flooded with messages from her, all of them accusing me of being with someone else. She said I had deceived her, and that apparently I'd been faking my feelings for her this whole time. If I really liked her, I wouldn't have moved on so easily. I asked her what she was talking about, reminding her that our last conversation about this was months ago and that she had completely humiliated me. So of course I moved on. She said she was still thinking about it, and that I never told her I had moved on. So catching me like this was basically like I'd cheated on her, and now she wanted to talk in person about it. I told her I wasn't going to meet in person to discuss anything, and that she was the one who rejected me in the first place. If she wanted to be with me, she should have said something before I found someone else. I told her I could still be her friend, but after everything she said, I no longer felt any attraction toward her. She insisted that she wanted to talk about it in person and was already on her way to my house. I told her not to come and that there was nothing left to say, but she didn't listen, so I guess she's coming anyway. Honestly, I have no idea how this conversation is going to go, but I know it won't be good. As I stared at my phone screen, watching my friend's messages pile up, I felt a mix of anger and exhaustion. She always made it clear she didn't want anything romantic with me, yet now she acted like she had been betrayed. I was tired of all the drama, but I knew there was no way to avoid this confrontation, given that she was determined to come to my house. So, I waited. After a few minutes, I heard a loud knock on the door. I took a deep breath before opening it, and there she was standing with eyes full of rage and maybe even some hurt. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, but I couldn't bring myself to feel bad for her at that moment. I had already given everything I had trying to understand what she wanted, but now there was no more room for illusions. "Why did you do this to me?" she blurted out the moment I opened the door, her voice trembling with indignation. "You said you liked me. How could you be with someone else now?" I kept the door open, letting her in. I didn't want the neighbors to hear this argument, which promised to be intense. I closed the door and turned to face her. "How did I do this to you?" I repeated incredulously, laughing bitterly. "I spent years trying to be with you. Years. I asked you for answers, for clarity, for honesty, and what did you do? You threw me aside, told me to forget it, that I wasn't good enough for you. So why now, when I'm finally trying to move on, do you act like I owe you something?" She huffed, her eyes welling up with tears that she was fighting to hold back. I was thinking, I didn't want to rush things. You know these feelings aren't simple. I thought you'd wait for me. Wait. I cut her off, my voice louder than I intended. Wait for what? Exactly. You never gave me anything to wait for. You left me in limbo, acting like I was just a backup plan. And when I asked for an answer, when I said I couldn't live in that uncertainty anymore, you didn't think twice before humiliating me. And now you expect me to apologize for not continuing to wait around while you decide? She fell silent, her anger giving way to a glimpse of insecurity. It wasn't common for her to hear this tone from me. For so long, I had been submissive to her whims, always willing to give in, to forgive, to wait. I just didn't know what I wanted, she finally said, her voice lower, almost a whisper. But now I know. And seeing you with her, I realized I could lose you. I shook my head, feeling a lump in my throat. Part of me had waited for those words for a long time. I wanted to hear that she finally wanted me, that she had realized my worth. But now that those words had been said, they had no impact. They felt empty, too late. I looked at her and saw someone who was only acting out of fear of losing control over me. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's not that you want me. It's that you don't want me to be with anyone else. You like knowing I was always available, that I wouldn't go anywhere, no matter what you did or said. But now that I'm trying to be happy with someone else, it bothers you. This isn't love, it's ego. You just don't like losing control." She stood there, stunned, and tears finally began to roll down her face. For the first time, she seemed to understand what she had done. But even then, she tried to argue. "That's not true. I was just confused." I raised my hand, signaling for her to stop. I didn't want to hear any more empty excuses. "It doesn't matter now. I'm over it. I found someone who really wants to be with me, who makes me feel valued without me having to beg for it. And honestly, I deserve that. I deserve someone who won't leave me waiting while they decide if I'm good enough. You rejected me, and I accepted that. Now, I'm moving on, and you need to accept that too." She tried to step closer, holding onto my arm, her eyes wide, a last desperate attempt. "Please give me another chance. I can be that person for you. I promise. I just didn't realize it before, but now I know what I want." I gently but firmly pulled away. I felt sad, but not regretful. This was the closure I needed, even if it was painful. You had all the chances. I gave you everything I could, and you didn't want it. Now it's too late. I don't feel the same way anymore, and I can't keep being your backup plan. I hope you find what you're looking for, but it won't be with me. She stood there, motionless, as I opened the door for her to leave. Her eyes were filled with tears, and I could see that she finally understood that she had lost. I didn't want to be cruel, but I knew I had to be firm. "Goodbye," I said simply, And without another word, she left, sobbing quietly. I closed the door behind her and let out a deep sigh, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. It was as if a great weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. I knew that, in the end, I had done what was best for myself. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first. A few hours later, I sent a message to the girl I was seeing. I wanted to see her, to be close to someone who genuinely cared for me without any games or insecurities. And when she replied saying she wanted to see me too, I smiled, feeling genuine happiness, knowing I was finally on the right path to being happy without looking back. After that confrontation, I finally felt like a chapter of my life had closed. For the first time in years, I wasn't stuck in an endless game of uncertainty and expectations. I had something real and solid now, and even though I felt a bit sad closing the door on my old friend, I knew it was the best thing for me. The days became lighter. I started dedicating myself truly to the relationship with the girl who had come into my life so unexpectedly. She was fun, honest, and, above all, genuinely cared about me. There were no secrets, no confusion about feelings. Things were how they should be, easy and clear. Every time I saw her, the sense of well-being grew, and I realized that I was finally free from the chains of the past. Eventually, we officially started dating. We had so much in common, but also enough differences to keep things interesting. She challenged me to be better, and I supported her in every way I could. I felt like I was finally building something meaningful with someone who truly wanted to be by my side. I met her family, and she met mine. Slowly, our lives intertwined, and I realized that this was what I had always wanted. Someone who loved me fully, without fear of expressing how they felt. While I moved on with my life, I started to hear some things about my old friend. It wasn't something I sought out, but mutual friends ended up mentioning her. Apparently, after our argument, she began distancing herself from our group. She wasn't as present at parties or gatherings, and when she did show up, she always seemed distant. Some friends said she seemed down, had started drinking more than usual, and seemed to be avoiding people. I had mixed feelings about it. Part of me worried about her. After all, despite everything, we had been friends for many years. But another part of me couldn't forget all she had done, how she had manipulated me and discarded me so many times. She always thought she was in control, thought I'd always be there waiting, and now that I had moved on, it seemed like her world was falling apart. One night, while my girlfriend and I were at dinner with some friends, one of them mentioned they had seen my old friend at a bar, completely drunk and crying. He said it casually, just commenting on how different she seemed. My girlfriend, who knew the whole story, squeezed my hand under the table, as if to say that I didn't need to pay attention to that. And she was right. I shouldn't let myself get dragged back to the past, but I couldn't help the bitter feeling. She always made me feel like I wasn't good enough, that she was out of my league, and now she was the one hitting rock bottom while I was finally finding happiness. A few weeks later, I received a message from her. It was the first time she had reached out since that night she came to my house. The message was short, just asking to talk. I stared at the screen, wondering what I should do. Part of me wanted to ignore it, simply delete the message and move on. But another part knew that maybe she genuinely needed help. However, I couldn't be that person for her. I couldn't go back to being the safety net that she had discarded so many times. I decided to respond simply. I told her that I hoped she was doing well, but that I didn't think it would be a good idea for us to meet. I was honest. I had moved on, I was happy, and I didn't think it was fair to my girlfriend to reopen old wounds. I wished her the best and ended the conversation there. She didn't reply, and I knew that probably hurt her, but it was the best thing for both of us. Over time, the stories about her became less frequent. I stopped hearing about her drunken nights or failed relationships. She seemed to have disappeared from our social circle, and I didn't make an effort to find out where she was. It wasn't out of a lack of empathy, but because I knew that to truly be happy, I needed to leave all of that behind. My life, on the other hand, kept getting better. My career was advancing, my relationship was strong, and I was surrounded by people who valued me. My girlfriend and I decided to move into an apartment together, a place just for us, and that brought a sense of a fresh start that I so badly needed. Every day, I felt like I was building a new version of myself, more confident, more secure, happier. Sometimes, when I was alone and my mind wandered, I would wonder what would have happened if she had been honest with me from the start. Maybe we would have worked out, maybe not. But then I looked at my current life and knew that I was exactly where I needed to be. That uncertainty, that constant maybe, was left behind. Now I had something concrete, something real. I heard about her again almost a year later. A mutual friend mentioned that she had moved to another city, apparently trying to start over. He said she was working at a job she didn't really like and living alone. When I asked if she seemed okay, he hesitated before saying that she seemed more lost than ever. It was sad, of course, but there was nothing more I could do. I had tried to be there for her for so many years, and she never gave me the space. Looking at it all, I realized that sometimes some people just aren't ready to receive the love we want to give. I loved her, truly, but she wasn't ready for it. And now, after everything, I knew I deserved someone who was ready to love me back. And I had found that person. As I got ready for dinner with my girlfriend, watching her smile while she talked about our future plans, I felt a deep sense of peace. I left the past where it belonged and embraced the present that I had finally earned.
I showed up at my parents' house unannounced and saw them yelling at my 6-year-old black daughter, "Serve coffee to your cousins, this is your place in the family." That's when I stopped paying their bills. My name is Carol. I'm 32, work as a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm in Charlotte, and I thought I knew my family. I thought I could trust them with the most precious thing in my world, my 6-year-old daughter, Maya. That Tuesday in March started like any other. I left Maya at my mother's house before work, the same routine we'd followed for 2 years since I couldn't afford full-time daycare on my salary. Mom always seemed happy to watch her granddaughter, and Maya loved playing with her cousins. My sister Jessica's twin girls, Emma and Sophie, who were 7. I finished a client presentation earlier than expected and decided to surprise everyone by picking Maya up early. Maybe we could grab ice cream, just the two of us. I used my key to enter through the back door, planning to announce myself, but voices from the living room made me pause. "Maya, the grown-ups need more coffee. Go refill the pot," I heard my mother's voice, sharp and commanding in a way I'd never heard her use with the twins. "But Grandma, I want to play with Emma and Sophie," Maya's small voice replied. "Those girls are busy with their new tablets. You need to learn your place in this family, young lady. Some children are born to be served, others to serve. Now go." I stood frozen in the hallway, my briefcase suddenly feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. Through the doorway, I could see Maya, barely tall enough to reach the coffee maker, carefully pouring water while my mother sat supervising. Emma and Sophie were sprawled on the couch with brand new iPads, completely absorbed in their games. "Clean those crumbs off the table too," Mom continued, "and be careful not to disturb your cousins. They're using expensive equipment." Maya nodded silently, her little hands working to sweep crumbs into her palm. She moved carefully, almost fearfully, around the coffee table where her cousins sat. Neither Emma nor Sophie looked up. They were used to this. That's better. "You see, Maya, everyone has their role. Some families raise children to expect things handed to them, but that's not realistic for everyone. You need to understand that early." The words hit me like physical blows. I watched my beautiful daughter, with her father's warm brown skin and my green eyes, being turned into a servant while her lighter-skinned cousins were treated like princesses. The coffee pot in her small hands shook slightly as she carried it back to the kitchen. My mother noticed me before I could decide whether to reveal myself. "Carol, you're early." Her tone shifted instantly to the warm, grandmotherly voice I knew. "What's going on here?" I managed to ask, though my throat felt tight. "Oh, just having Maya help out a little. She's such a good girl, always eager to help Grandma." Maya looked at me with confusion and something else. Was it relief? Or fear that I'd disapprove of her not helping enough? "Maya, honey, get your backpack. We're leaving." "But I didn't finish cleaning," she whispered. Those 5 words broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break. My 6-year-old daughter thought she needed permission to stop being a servant in her grandmother's house. "You don't need to clean anything, baby. Let's go home." As we drove away, Maya was quiet in the back seat. Finally, she asked, "Mommy, why do Emma and Sophie get to play while I have to work?" I pulled over because my hands were shaking too much to drive safely. In the rearview mirror, I saw my daughter's innocent face, still trying to understand why her world was different from her cousins. How long had this been happening? How had I missed it? You don't have to work, Maya. You're a little girl. Little girls are supposed to play. Grandma says I'm different from Emma and Sophie. She says I have to learn early. The rage that filled me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever felt. This wasn't just favoritism or old-fashioned ideas about helping with chores. This was systematic, deliberate, and cruel. And it had been happening under my nose while I trusted my family to love my daughter the way I did. That night, after Maya fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and forced myself to remember other moments I'd dismissed or explained away. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was uglier than I wanted to admit. Sitting in my kitchen that night, memories I'd buried came flooding back. 5 years ago, when I first brought Marcus home to meet my family, I knew there would be resistance. What I didn't expect was the sheer brutality of their reaction. Marcus was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner: kind, intelligent, successful in his career as a software engineer, and completely devoted to me. We'd been dating for 8 months when I finally gathered the courage to introduce him to my parents. I was 27, old enough to make my own decisions, but I still craved their approval. The dinner was a disaster from the moment Marcus walked through the door. Dad barely shook his hand, and Mom's smile was so forced it looked painful. Jessica, who was 24 at the time, made exaggerated small talk that felt more like an interrogation. "So, Marcus, where did you grow up?" Dad asked, his tone suggesting he already disapproved of the answer. "West Charlotte, sir. My parents still live in the same house where they raised me and my 2 sisters." "I see. And what do your parents do?" Marcus handled their questions with grace, explaining that his father was a mechanic who'd built his own shop from nothing, and his mother taught elementary school for 30 years. Good, honest people who'd worked hard to send their 3 children to college, but I could see it in my family's faces. Nothing he said mattered. They'd already decided who he was based on his appearance. After Marcus left, the real conversation began. "Carol, you can't be serious about this," Mom said, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "About what? About dating a wonderful man who treats me better than any boyfriend I've ever had?" "You know what we mean," Dad interjected. "Think about the children you'd have. Think about the life you're choosing. What exactly are you saying?" I demanded, though I knew exactly what they meant. "We're saying that life is hard enough without making it harder," Jessica chimed in. "Mixed-race children face challenges you can't even imagine. Is it fair to put them through that?" They framed their racism as concern for hypothetical future children. When I called them out on it, they acted hurt, claiming they just wanted what was best for me. The conversation escalated until Dad delivered his ultimatum. "If you marry this man, don't expect us to support you, financially or otherwise." "Then I guess you won't be supporting me," I shot back. The engagement 6 months later caused another explosion. This time, the threats were more specific. Dad controlled a small family trust that would have helped me buy a house someday. Mom mentioned how disappointed Grandma would be if she were still alive. Jessica started making comments about how I was turning my back on my family. When I announced I was pregnant, the reaction was even worse. Mom actually cried, not tears of joy, but tears of what she called mourning the life you could have had. The wedding was small and tense. My parents attended but looked like they were at a funeral. Marcus's family, in contrast, welcomed me with open arms. His mother, Carol, held my hands and told me she was gaining a daughter. His father, James, walked me down the aisle when my own father refused. When Maya was born, I hoped everything would change. How could they not love this perfect little girl? For a while, it seemed like they were trying. Mom bought baby clothes and offered to babysit sometimes. Dad would hold Maya, though always awkwardly, like he wasn't sure how. But even then, there were signs I chose to ignore. Comments about Maya's hair being challenging or her skin tone being hard to match with colors. When Jessica's twins were born a year later, the difference in treatment was subtle but noticeable. The twins got elaborate nursery decorations and expensive clothes. Maya got practical gifts and hand-me-downs. Marcus noticed it too. "Your family tolerates Maya," he said one day after a particularly uncomfortable family dinner. "They don't celebrate her." "They're trying," I defended them. "Change takes time." "How much time, Carol? She's 4 years old. When do we stop making excuses for people who should love her unconditionally?" Marcus was right, but I wasn't ready to face it. The financial support had become crucial when Dad got laid off from his manufacturing job, and Mom's part-time retail work couldn't cover their mortgage. I found myself paying their bills, Jessica's rent, even groceries for family gatherings where Maya was increasingly treated as an afterthought. I told myself I was being the bigger person, that love would eventually win. But love couldn't win when only one side was fighting for it. The coffee incident forced me to confront memories I'd been suppressing for years. Sitting at my kitchen table until 3 in the morning, I mentally reviewed every family gathering, every birthday party, every holiday, looking for the patterns I'd refused to see. Maya's 5th birthday party was the first clear sign I should have recognized. I'd planned it at my parents' house since their backyard was bigger. Jessica brought elaborate wrapped gifts for the twins, matching princess dress-up sets that cost at least $60 each, just because they saw Maya's party preparations and wanted to feel special too. Maya received a small bag of used clothes from Mom. "These are from when Jessica was little," she'd explained. "Still plenty of wear left in them." I'd felt embarrassed but convinced myself that practical gifts showed different kinds of love. The birthday photos told a story I hadn't wanted to read. In every group shot, Maya stood at the edge of the frame while Emma and Sophie were positioned front and center. When I looked through Mom's phone later, I realized she'd taken dozens of pictures of the twins, but only a few that included Maya, and those were clearly afterthoughts. Then there was the hair issue. Maya inherited Marcus's thick, beautiful curls, but my family treated her hair like a problem to be solved rather than a feature to celebrate. Mom constantly suggested I do something about that hair and bought harsh chemical relaxers without asking my permission. "It would be so much easier if you just made it more manageable," she'd say, while running her fingers through Emma's and Sophie's straight blonde hair like it was spun silk. When I firmly told her that Maya's hair was beautiful as it was, Mom sighed like I was being unreasonably difficult. "I'm just trying to help her fit in better." Fit in where? With who? The questions I should have asked then were finally occurring to me now. The seating arrangements at family dinners became another painful memory to examine. Maya was always placed at the kids' table even when there was room at the main table. Emma and Sophie, despite being older by only a year, often got to sit with the adults because they're better conversationalists. I remembered one Thanksgiving when Maya asked why she couldn't sit with the grown-ups too. "Because little girls who interrupt and don't use their best manners need to learn at the kids' table first," Dad had said. But Emma and Sophie interrupted constantly and were considered spirited and confident. The gift disparity went beyond birthdays. At Christmas, the twins received expensive electronics, name-brand clothes, and elaborate toy sets. Maya got educational books and practical items. When I mentioned the imbalance, Mom said, "We believe in giving Maya things that will help her build character and practical skills." Why did Maya need more character building than her cousins? Even the language was different. Emma and Sophie were bright and creative and going to be heartbreakers. Maya was well-behaved and helpful and learning to be responsible. One set of girls was being prepared to receive, the other was being trained to serve. The family photos displayed in Mom's living room were perhaps the most telling evidence. Dozens of pictures of Emma and Sophie at various ages covered the mantelpiece and side tables. Maya appeared in exactly 3 photos, and in 2 of them she was partially obscured by other people. When I'd asked about it once, Mom said, "Oh, you don't visit as often, so I don't have as many opportunities to take pictures." But I'd been there just as frequently, and Maya had posed for plenty of pictures that somehow never made it to frames. The playdates were another painful memory. Emma and Sophie had regular playdates with other children from their school and neighborhood. Maya was rarely invited to join, and when I suggested including her, Jessica would say, "Well, she goes to a different school, so she doesn't really know these kids." Maya went to a different school because it was closer to my apartment and had an excellent diversity program. But somehow this became a reason to exclude her rather than an opportunity to expand the other children's social circles. Even the conversations about the children's futures were different. Jessica talked about Emma and Sophie's college plans, their potential careers, the trips they'd take when they were older. When Maya was mentioned in future tense, it was about whatever path works out for her and we'll see what opportunities come her way. As if opportunities were things that happened to some children, but not others. The most heartbreaking memory was from last summer. We were all at the community pool, and Maya was swimming beautifully. Marcus had taught her when she was 3. A woman complimented her swimming and asked if she was on a team. Before I could answer, Mom jumped in. "Oh, she's naturally athletic. Good thing, since she'll probably need sports scholarships if she wants to go to college." Emma and Sophie, who could barely float, were never discussed in terms of needing scholarships. Their college education was assumed to be provided, not earned. The financial trap had been set so gradually I hadn't seen it being built around me. It started 3 years ago when Dad lost his job at the textile plant where he'd worked for 15 years. The company downsized, and at 58 he was too old to retrain and too young to retire, as he put it. Mom's part-time job at the department store barely covered groceries. Their mortgage payment was $1,200 a month, And with Dad's unemployment benefits, they were falling behind fast. When they asked for help, how could I say no? They were my parents, and Maya was their granddaughter. Family helps family, right? What started as temporary assistance became permanent dependence. First, I covered their mortgage for just a few months while Dad looked for work. Then it was the car payment when their old Honda broke down. Then Mom's prescription medications when they couldn't afford the insurance copays. By the time I realized the scope of it, I was paying nearly $1,500 a month to keep my family afloat. My own savings account had dwindled to almost nothing. But every time I mentioned scaling back, Mom would get teary-eyed talking about losing the house where Jessica and I grew up. Jessica's situation made it even more complicated. She'd been laid off from her administrative job 6 months ago and was collecting unemployment while looking for the right opportunity. Meanwhile, I was covering her rent, another $800 monthly, plus her car insurance and phone bill. I can't take just anything, she'd explain. I have the twins to think about. I need a job with flexible hours and good benefits. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica needed flexibility for her children, but I was expected to work full-time while paying everyone else's bills and somehow managing single motherhood. When I pointed this out, the response was always the same. You're so strong, Carol. You can handle anything. What they meant was, you're useful, so we'll keep using you. The emotional manipulation was sophisticated. Dad would talk about his pride being wounded by unemployment, how hard it was to accept help from his daughter. Mom would mention how grateful they were, how they didn't know what they'd do without me. Jessica would send pictures of the twins in their nice clothes and toys, bought with money I'd given her with captions like, "Thanks to the best auntie ever." They made me feel like a hero while systematically draining my resources and energy. The power dynamic was crystal clear, though I refused to see it then. Because they depended on me financially, they needed to keep me compliant and willing to continue the payments. But they also needed to maintain their sense of superiority and control. The solution was to accept my money while subtly punishing me for being in the position to provide it. My success became a source of resentment disguised as pride. "Look at our Carol, doing so well for herself," Mom would say to her friends. But the tone suggested I'd somehow gotten above my station. When I bought a reliable used car, the comments were about fancy choices and forgetting where you came from. The most insidious part was how Maya became leverage in this system. When I occasionally mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the financial pressure, Mom would sigh and say, "Well, I suppose we could stop watching Maya since money is tight for you. I'm sure you can find other arrangements." The threat was never stated directly, but it was always there. If I stopped being financially useful, Maya might lose her relationship with her grandparents. And despite everything, I wanted her to have family connections beyond just Marcus and me. So I worked overtime, took on freelance projects, and stretched every dollar to maintain everyone else's stability while my own life remained on hold. I couldn't afford to move to a better neighborhood or save for Maya's college fund, but I could make sure my parents kept their house and Jessica didn't have to take a job she considered beneath her. The financial records told a stark story. In 2.5 years, I'd given my family over $40,000. That was money that could have been Maya's college fund or a down payment on a house or simply security for her future. Instead, it subsidized a lifestyle that excluded and diminished her. Even worse, the money gave them permission to continue their treatment of Maya because they knew I wouldn't risk disrupting the arrangement. They could be subtly cruel, knowing I was too invested in keeping the peace to make waves. The financial dependence wasn't just about money. It was about control, power, and maintaining a system where Maya would always be less than her cousins, where I would always be grateful for their tolerance, and where speaking up would cost more than staying silent. Until now. After the coffee incident, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd witnessed. The next few days, I started asking subtle questions during my regular conversations with extended family members. What I discovered made me physically sick. My cousin Rachel, Jessica's best friend since childhood, was the first to confirm my worst fears. We were having coffee while our kids played at the mall playground, a casual conversation that became anything but casual. "I've been wondering how to bring this up," Rachel said carefully, watching Maya push Sophie on the swing set. "Some of the things I've seen at your mom's house, they bother me." "What kinds of things?" I asked, though my stomach was already dropping. "Well, like at Emma and Sophie's birthday party last month. Maya spent the whole time fetching drinks for adults and cleaning up wrapping paper while the other kids played. When I offered to help her, your mom said Maya was learning responsibility and I shouldn't interfere." The twins' birthday party. I'd been working late and arrived just as it was ending. Maya had seemed tired, and I'd assumed she'd been playing hard with her cousins. Rachel, be honest with me. What else have you seen? She hesitated, then seemed to decide I could handle the truth. Carol, they call her the little helper when you're not around. And not in a cute way. Like it's her job. Last summer at the family barbecue, Maya was carrying plates and refilling drinks while Emma and Sophie played in the sprinkler. When Maya asked if she could play too, your mom said the other kids' fun shouldn't be interrupted by cleanup that still needed doing. I remembered that barbecue. I'd been impressed by how helpful Maya was being. God, how blind had I been? My Aunt Linda provided even more disturbing details during a phone call that weekend. She'd been staying quiet because she didn't want to cause family drama, but she'd witnessed several incidents that haunted her. That child gets treated like Cinderella, she said bluntly. At Christmas dinner, she was sent to eat in the kitchen while everyone else sat at the dining room table. Your mother said it was because there wasn't enough room, but there were 2 empty chairs. Why didn't you say something? I demanded. Because every time I tried to include Maya in activities with the other kids, Jessica or your mother would redirect her to some chore. They'd make it seem like Maya preferred being helpful. But Carol, I watched that little girl's face. She doesn't prefer it. She thinks it's what's expected of her. The most damaging revelation came from my Uncle Pete, Dad's brother, who'd apparently been keeping a mental list of incidents because they made him so uncomfortable. They've got that kid convinced she's different from Emma and Sophie in some fundamental way, he told me during a tense conversation at his kitchen table. I heard your mother tell Maya that some children are born to lead and others to follow, and that following was an important job too. Maya nodded like she understood and accepted it. When was this? Last month, at your dad's birthday dinner. Maya was maybe 4 feet away from me, wiping down chairs while the twins played video games on someone's phone. She's 6 years old, Carol. She should be playing video games, not cleaning chairs. Pete's wife, Janet, had been listening from the living room. She joined us, her face flushed with anger I'd never seen from her before. I need to tell you something that's been eating at me for months, she said. At Jessica's baby shower for the twins, your mother was showing off ultrasound pictures and talking about how excited she was to have real grandchildren she could spoil properly. When someone mentioned Maya, she said, well, that situation is complicated, but these 2 will be straightforward. The words hit me like a physical blow. Real grandchildren. Maya wasn't real to them. She was a complication to be managed, but it was my cousin Mark who revealed the most systematic cruelty. He'd been visiting more frequently since his divorce, helping Dad with household projects, and he'd witnessed what he called training sessions. They're not just treating Maya differently, he explained grimly. They're actively teaching her to accept less. I watched your mother give Emma and Sophie each a cookie, then hand Maya a broken piece and say, some people get whole cookies, some people get pieces, and both are fine. Maya just took the broken piece and said thank you. Jesus Christ. It gets worse. They talk about her like she's not there. I heard Jessica tell your mom that Maya was getting too comfortable asking questions about why she couldn't have the same treats as the twins. Your mother said they needed to nip that entitlement in the bud before she got older and became difficult to manage. The picture was complete now, and it was horrifying. This wasn't unconscious bias or generational ignorance. This was deliberate, systematic psychological conditioning designed to teach my daughter that she deserved less than her cousins because of who she was. That night, after Maya fell asleep, I sat at my laptop researching until my eyes burned. I needed concrete evidence, not just family gossip and my own belated observations. If I was going to protect my daughter, I needed proof that would hold up legally and socially. I needed documentation so clear that no one could dismiss it as misunderstanding or overreaction. The research was both enlightening and terrifying. North Carolina law was very specific about child abuse and neglect, and what I was reading suggested that systematic discrimination and forced labor, even within a family context, could constitute grounds for legal intervention. But I needed evidence. I spent hours reading about hidden cameras, audio recording devices, and the legality of surveillance in different situations. Since I would be recording in my mother's house without her consent, I had to be careful about how I gathered evidence. But as Maya's parent, I had legal rights to document her treatment when I wasn't present to supervise. The equipment was easier to obtain than I'd expected. A quick search led me to several online retailers selling tiny cameras designed for home security. I ordered a small device that could be hidden in Maya's backpack, with battery life long enough to record a full day and memory capacity for hours of footage. The psychological preparation was harder than the technical aspects. I had to face the possibility that what I'd already discovered was just the surface. If my family was willing to be cruel when other relatives were present, what were they doing when they thought no witnesses existed? I also had to prepare for the aftermath. Once I gathered evidence of systematic abuse, there would be no going back to pretending everything was normal. This would either force my family to change completely or destroy my relationship with them entirely. Given their investment in maintaining the current power structure, I suspected it would be the latter. The financial implications were staggering too. If I cut off their support, which would be necessary to show I was serious, my parents could lose their house. Jessica might have to move back in with them or find a job she considered beneath her standards. The twins' lifestyle would change dramatically. For years, I'd been afraid of these consequences. Now I realized that my fear had been enabling abuse. My financial support had given my family the security to mistreat Maya without worrying about consequences. They knew I wouldn't jeopardize the arrangement because I was too invested in keeping everyone happy and stable. But Maya's stability was being sacrificed for everyone else's comfort. I called in sick to work the day the camera equipment arrived. Maya was at school, and I had the apartment to myself to figure out the technical setup. The camera was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a large button, and came with detailed instructions for hiding it in various objects. Maya's school backpack had a small decorative patch on the front pocket that would provide perfect cover. I carefully created a tiny hole in the fabric behind the patch, positioned the camera lens, and secured it from the inside with the provided adhesive strips. The patch's design made the lens opening invisible, unless you knew exactly where to look. The hardest part was planning what to tell Maya. I couldn't explain the real situation without traumatizing her or risking that she'd accidentally reveal the surveillance, but I needed her cooperation to ensure the camera captured useful footage. I decided on a story about wanting to see how her day went when I wasn't there, like a special game where the backpack would remember her activities. Maya loved the idea of her backpack having a special job, and she promised to keep it with her and treat it carefully. That evening, I tested the camera's positioning and sound quality. The footage was clear enough to see faces and read body language, and the audio picked up conversations across a normal-sized room. It wasn't Hollywood-quality surveillance, but it would document whatever was happening in clear, undeniable detail. The night before I planned to execute my recording operation, I lay in bed rehearsing scenarios. What if Maya forgot and left her backpack in another room during crucial moments? What if someone discovered the camera? What if the footage revealed abuse so severe that I'd blame myself for not acting sooner? But the alternative was continuing to enable a system that was teaching my daughter to accept discrimination and abuse as normal. Maya was internalizing lessons about her worth that would damage her for life if I didn't intervene. The morning of the recording felt like preparing for surgery. Everything had to be perfect, and there was no room for error. I woke up early to double-check the camera's battery level and memory capacity. The device was fully charged and ready to record up to 8 hours of footage. Maya was excited about her backpack's special job and promised again to keep it with her all day. I helped her pack her usual items: coloring books, small toys, a juice box for snack time, arranging everything so the backpack would naturally stay with her during activities. Remember, honey, your backpack is like your buddy today. Don't leave it in another room, okay? It wants to see everything you do. Like a pet backpack? Maya asked, giggling at the idea. Exactly like that. Dropping her off at Mom's house required every acting skill I possessed. I had to seem normal and relaxed while my heart was racing and my palms were sweating. Mom greeted us at the door with her usual grandmother smile, but I found myself studying her expression for signs of the cruelty I now knew existed. Jessica's bringing the twins over in an hour, Mom told me, as Maya hung up her special backpack on the hook by the kitchen table. They're excited to play with Maya. Play. The word felt loaded now that I knew what it really meant. That's wonderful. Maya loves spending time with her cousins. I kissed Maya goodbye, reminding her to take good care of your backpack, buddy, and walked to my car on legs that felt unsteady. Once I was out of sight, I parked at a coffee shop 3 blocks away and tried to calm down. The day at work was torture. Every phone call could have been my mother discovering the camera. Every email notification made my stomach jump. I kept checking the clock, calculating how long the device had been recording, imagining what scenes were being captured. My coworker Janet noticed my distraction during our team meeting. You seem stressed today. Everything okay? Just family stuff, I managed. Nothing serious. But it was the most serious thing I'd ever done. I was potentially documenting criminal behavior by people I'd loved and trusted my entire life. I was gathering evidence that could send my own mother to jail and destroy my family permanently. By lunchtime, I was so anxious I couldn't eat. I kept visualizing Maya in situations I'd witnessed before. Being ordered around while her cousins played, being given different food or different treatment, being made to feel less than. But now those scenes would be documented. The afternoon dragged endlessly. I made mistakes on simple tasks because I couldn't concentrate. When my phone rang at 2:30, I nearly jumped out of my chair, convinced it was Mom calling to confront me about the surveillance. Instead, it was a client with routine questions about a marketing campaign. I handled the call professionally while inside I was screaming. At 4 o'clock, I couldn't take it anymore. I left work early, claiming I had a doctor's appointment. The drive to my parents' house seemed to take forever, even though I was probably speeding. When I arrived, the scene looked normal from the outside. I could hear children's laughter from the backyard, which gave me a moment of relief. Maybe today had been different. Maybe I'd captured footage of Maya being treated well, which would force me to reconsider everything I thought I knew. But as soon as I walked through the front door, that hope evaporated. Maya's in the kitchen finishing up her chores, Mom said without looking up from her magazine. The twins are playing in the living room. Chores. That night, after Maya was asleep, I sat in my bedroom with my laptop and the small camera device, my hands shaking as I prepared to review the footage. Part of me hoped I'd find nothing incriminating, that maybe today had been an exception, that my family wasn't as cruel as I'd begun to believe. I was wrong. The footage was worse than my darkest fears. The recording began normally enough, showing Maya's arrival and her excited greeting of Emma and Sophie, but within 30 minutes, the pattern I'd witnessed was in full documented display. "Maya, go get us some juice boxes from the refrigerator," Jessica's voice commanded from off-camera. "And bring napkins too." "Can I have a juice box too?" Maya asked. "After you finish helping. Emma and Sophie are guests today, so they get served first." Guests. In their own grandmother's house, where Maya spent 3 days a week. What followed was 3 hours of systematic degradation that made my stomach turn. Maya fetched drinks, cleaned spills, organized toys, and swept crumbs while Emma and Sophie lounged on the couch with their tablets and snacks. Every time Maya attempted to join an activity, she was redirected to another task. But it was the conversation between Mom and Jessica, clearly audible while Maya was in the next room, that provided the most damning evidence. "She's getting too comfortable asking for things," Jessica complained. "Yesterday she asked why she couldn't have the same snacks as Emma and Sophie." "I've noticed that too," Mom replied. "We need to be more firm about boundaries. Children like Maya need to understand their position early, or they develop unrealistic expectations." Children like Maya. The phrase was delivered with such casual cruelty that I had to pause the recording. It got worse. Around the 2-hour mark, Maya spilled a small amount of juice while refilling the twins' cups. The reaction was swift and harsh. "Maya, look what you've done!" Mom's voice snapped. "This is why some children can't be trusted with nice things. Emma and Sophie would never be so careless." "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'll clean it up." "Yes, you will. And next time, maybe you'll be more careful. Some people have to work harder to earn privileges." The footage showed Maya, barely 6 years old, scrubbing the floor with tears in her eyes while her cousins continued playing undisturbed. No one comforted her. No one said accidents happen. She was treated like a servant who had failed in her duties. But the most heartbreaking moment came near the end of the recording. Maya, exhausted from hours of work, sat quietly in the corner while Emma and Sophie played a new board game Mom had bought for them. "Can I play too?" Maya asked softly. "This game is for older children who understand complex rules," Mom replied without even looking at her. "Why don't you organize the toy box instead? That's more your speed." Maya nodded and began sorting toys while her younger cousins enjoyed their game. The resignation in her posture, the way she accepted this rejection without argument, showed how thoroughly she'd been conditioned to expect less. The audio captured one final exchange that nearly made me vomit. Jessica and Mom were discussing plans for the twins' upcoming school field trip, trying to decide if they should send extra spending money. "We want to make sure they can buy whatever catches their eye," Jessica said. "It's important for them to feel confident and able to participate fully." "Absolutely," Mom agreed. "Children need to feel empowered and valued. Speaking of which, we should probably start having Maya help with more household tasks. It's good for children in her situation to develop strong work habits early." Her situation. My daughter's biracial identity was a situation that required different treatment, different expectations, different rules. I watched the footage 3 times, taking notes and screenshots of the most damaging moments. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. This wasn't unconscious bias or old-fashioned child-rearing methods. This was deliberate, systematic psychological abuse designed to teach Maya that she was inherently less valuable than her white cousins. The recordings showed forced labor, emotional manipulation, discriminatory treatment, and psychological conditioning that could cause lasting damage to a child's self-esteem and worldview. Any reasonable person viewing this footage would be horrified. More importantly, Any court or child protective services worker would recognize it as abuse. I had my evidence. Now I had to decide what to do with it. I called in sick to work the next morning and spent 2 hours researching the proper channels for reporting child abuse in North Carolina. The process was more straightforward than I'd expected, but emotionally devastating to contemplate. I was about to officially accuse my own family of criminal behavior. The Mecklenburg County Department of Social Services had a Child Protective Services division that handled abuse and neglect cases. I could file a report online or in person, but given the complexity of my situation and the video evidence, an in-person meeting seemed more appropriate. I also researched whether I needed legal representation. Several family law attorneys offered free consultations for abuse cases, understanding that victims often lacked resources. I scheduled appointments with 2 different lawyers for later in the week, but first I needed to file the official report. The DSS office was in a nondescript government building downtown. Walking through those doors felt like crossing a line from which there would be no return. The waiting area was filled with families in various states of crisis. Some angry, some resigned, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. When my name was called, I followed a social worker named Patricia Williams to a small office filled with case files and children's drawings on the walls. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "I understand you need to file a report regarding your daughter," she said, pulling out a thick folder of forms. "Yes, I have video evidence of systematic abuse and discrimination by my family members." Her eyebrows rose slightly. Video evidence wasn't common in family abuse cases, which often relied on testimony and physical signs of mistreatment. I spent the next hour detailing everything I'd discovered: the financial manipulation, the differential treatment, the forced labor, and the psychological conditioning. Patricia took detailed notes and asked clarifying questions that showed she understood the severity of the situation. "Can I see the video footage?" she asked. I'd transferred the most damaging clips to my phone. Patricia watched in silence, her expression growing more concerned with each scene. When Maya appeared scrubbing the floor while crying, Patricia's jaw tightened visibly. "This is clear documentation of child labor and emotional abuse," she said when the footage ended. "The discriminatory language adds another dimension that makes this particularly serious." "What happens next?" "We'll open a formal investigation within 24 hours. This will include interviews with all parties involved, including Maya. We may need to examine your family's home environment and speak with other witnesses." The thought of Maya being interviewed about abuse made my stomach clench. But Patricia assured me that Child Services had trained specialists who knew how to talk to young children about difficult topics without traumatizing them further. "Will my family be arrested?" I asked. "That depends on what the investigation reveals and whether the district attorney decides to file criminal charges. What you've shown me could potentially support charges of child abuse, forced labor, and civil rights violations." Civil rights violations. I hadn't even considered that angle, but Patricia explained that systematic discrimination against a child based on race could fall under federal hate crime statutes, especially when combined with abuse. "I need to warn you," Patricia continued, "that filing this report will likely end your relationship with these family members permanently. Abuse cases within families rarely result in reconciliation." "I understand. I can't let this continue." "Good. Children need advocates who are willing to protect them, even when it's difficult." After completing the paperwork, I drove directly to the office of Carol Lenister, one of the family law attorneys I'd researched. Her practice specialized in child custody and abuse cases, with particular experience in discrimination-related family court matters. Attorney Lenister reviewed my documentation with the same serious attention Patricia had shown. "You have an exceptionally strong case," she told me. "Video evidence is rare in family abuse situations, and this footage clearly shows systematic mistreatment. Can I sue them?" "Potentially, yes. We could file civil lawsuits for emotional distress, discrimination, and damages related to the abuse, but I'd recommend waiting to see what criminal charges result from the DSS investigation. Criminal convictions would strengthen any civil case significantly." She explained that I might also be able to seek restraining orders preventing my family from contacting Maya, and that the video evidence could support custody provisions that limited or supervised any future contact. "The financial aspect adds an interesting dimension," she noted. "Your family's dependence on your support while simultaneously abusing your daughter shows a pattern of exploitation that courts take very seriously." By the time I left her office, I felt simultaneously empowered and terrified. The legal system was taking my concerns seriously, but I was about to destroy my entire extended family structure. Maya would lose her grandparents, her aunt, and her cousins. I would lose the family I'd known my entire life. but Maya would be safe. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on Thursday morning, 3 days after I filed the report. I was making breakfast for Maya when my phone rang with Jessica's number. "Carol, what the hell have you done?" Jessica's voice was shaking with rage and panic. "I protected my daughter," I replied calmly. "The police were just here. They arrested Mom. They said you filed some bullshit report claiming we abused Maya. This is insane." Through the background noise, I could hear Emma and Sophie crying and Dad shouting at someone. Probably the officers. My stomach twisted with sympathy for the twins. They didn't deserve to see their grandmother arrested. "It's not bullshit, Jessica. I have video evidence." "Video evidence of what? Mom babysitting her granddaughter?" "You've lost your mind, Carol. Maya is fine. She's happy. She loves it because she doesn't know she deserves better treatment than being your family's servant." The silence stretched long enough that I thought Jessica might have hung up. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter but more dangerous. "You just destroyed our family over nothing. Mom's been nothing but good to that kid, and you know it. This is about money, isn't it? You're mad about supporting us, so you made up this story. Watch the footage, Jessica. When the investigators show it to you, watch it and tell me Maya's treatment is normal." "I don't need to watch anything. I was there. I know what happened." "Yes, you were there. You were part of it." Jessica hung up without another word. The next call came an hour later from Dad. His voice was hollow, aged by the morning's events in a way I'd never heard before. "Carol, they've charged your mother with multiple felonies. Child abuse, forced labor, civil rights violations. They're saying she could go to prison for years." "Dad, don't. Just don't. You've destroyed us. Your mother is 63 years old, Carol. She can't survive prison." The pain in his voice was real, and it cut through my resolve like a knife. But then I remembered Maya scrubbing floors while her cousins played, and my sympathy hardened back into determination. Mom destroyed herself when she chose to abuse her granddaughter. Abuse? Maya was learning responsibility. She was being taught values. She was being taught that she's less than her cousins because of her race. That's not values, Dad. That's bigotry. Dad hung up too. The social media attacks started that afternoon. Jessica had apparently told her version of events to everyone in her network, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who'd fabricated abuse allegations to avoid supporting my family financially. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from extended family members, family friends, and even old high school acquaintances. Most were variations on the same theme. I was crazy, vindictive, greedy, and cruel. How could I put my own mother in jail? How could I traumatize Emma and Sophie by having their grandmother arrested? But a few messages were different. My cousin Rachel texted, "I saw the footage the investigators showed us. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You did the right thing." My Uncle Pete called to say, "Janet and I are proud of you for protecting Maya. What we saw on that video was sickening." The most important call came from Marcus's mother, Carol. "Honey, Marcus told me what happened. James and I want you to know that Maya will always have grandparents who love her unconditionally. Always." The financial impact was immediate and severe. I canceled all automatic payments to my parents' accounts and Jessica's rent. I transferred my parents' car loan into their names and notified the mortgage company that I was no longer responsible for their payments. Within a week, the consequences cascaded exactly as I'd predicted. Dad called to say they were losing the house. Jessica called to say she was being evicted. The ripple effects of Mom's arrest and my financial cutoff spread through my extended family like a virus, infecting every relationship and revealing truths I'd never wanted to face. Within a month, the comfortable fiction we'd all maintained about being a close, loving family had completely disintegrated. Dad found a job at a hardware store, but at minimum wage, it wasn't nearly enough to cover their expenses without my support. They lost the house within 6 weeks of the arrest, and Dad had to move in with his brother Pete, an arrangement that strained Pete's marriage and created tension throughout that side of the family. Jessica was evicted from her apartment and moved back to Mom's house, which was now empty and headed for foreclosure. She was living there illegally without utilities, desperately searching for employment and affordable housing for herself and the twins. The twins' lives changed dramatically overnight. Emma and Sophie went from being pampered princesses with tablets and new clothes to children whose mother worked double shifts at a call center and whose grandmother was in jail. Jessica had finally been forced to take any job available, and her bitterness poisoned every interaction we had. "Are you happy now?" she screamed at me during one particularly vicious phone call. "My daughters are asking why they can't have the things they used to have. They're asking why their grandmother is in jail. I don't hate Emma and Sophie, Jessica. I hate the way Maya was treated differently. Maya was never treated badly. She was taught responsibility while my girls were allowed to be children. There's a difference. Yes, there is a difference, and that difference is based on race, which makes it abuse. Jessica's response was to block my number and tell everyone who would listen that I was a vindictive sociopath who'd destroyed innocent children's lives over imaginary grievances. The social ostracism was more complete than I'd anticipated. Family friends who'd known me since childhood sided firmly with Mom and Jessica, viewing me as the ungrateful daughter who'd turned on her own blood. Invitations to community events stopped coming. People I'd known for decades crossed the street to avoid speaking to me. The legal proceedings dragged on for months, each court date bringing fresh waves of anger from my extended family. Mom's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal involving counseling instead of jail time, but the prosecutor's office was unwilling to compromise on such a well-documented case. The civil rights violations charge had attracted federal attention, and the FBI opened an investigation into whether there was a broader pattern of discrimination within our family or social circle. This expansion terrified everyone involved and made me even more of a pariah. You've brought federal agents into our lives over a 6-year-old being asked to help with chores, my Uncle Steve told me angrily. Do you understand how insane that sounds? But the footage spoke for itself. Every time someone tried to minimize Maya's treatment as normal discipline, the investigators would show them the video of my daughter scrubbing floors while crying, or the audio of Mom discussing how children, like Maya, needed different treatment. The most painful loss was my relationship with extended family members who'd initially supported me. My cousin Rachel, who'd been the first to confirm the abuse, gradually distanced herself as the legal consequences became more severe. My Aunt Linda stopped returning my calls after her husband couldn't get financial help from me like he'd received before. Even Uncle Pete began suggesting that maybe I'd gone too far with criminal charges. Your mother made mistakes, but prison seems excessive, he told me. Couldn't this have been handled within the family? We tried handling it within the family for 6 years, I replied. The result was systematic abuse of my daughter. Maya's therapy sessions became a weekly necessity as she processed the sudden absence of her extended family. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a child psychologist who specialized in discrimination-related trauma, worked with Maya to understand that the differential treatment she'd experienced wasn't normal. Maya has internalized some very damaging messages about her worth, Dr. Martinez explained to me. She's been conditioned to expect less and to accept unfair treatment as normal. Undoing that damage will take time. 8 months after Mom's arrest, as I write this final chapter, Maya and I have built a life that neither of us could have imagined during those dark days when she was scrubbing floors at her grandmother's house. The transformation in my daughter has been so profound that sometimes I barely recognize the confident, joyful child she's become. Maya no longer asks permission to play or apologizes for taking up space. She demands bedtime stories, negotiates for extra screen time, and complains when she doesn't get her way. All the normal, healthy behaviors of a child who knows she's valued unconditionally. When friends visit our apartment, she shows off her toys without shame and speaks up when she wants something. Dr. Martinez says Maya's recovery has been remarkable, though she warns that some effects may surface as she gets older. For now, Maya is simply a happy 6-year-old who believes she deserves the same treatment as any other child, because she does. The legal proceedings concluded last month with results that vindicated every difficult choice I made. Mom accepted a plea deal that included 18 months in county jail, 5 years of probation, mandatory counseling on racial bias, and a permanent restraining order preventing contact with Maya. Jessica was charged as an accessory and received community service plus mandatory counseling. Dad never found steady employment and eventually moved to Florida to live with his sister. The last I heard, he was working part-time at a grocery store and still insisting that I'd destroyed the family over nothing. He sends Maya birthday cards that I intercept and file away. Jessica finally found stable employment as an office manager and rented a small apartment for herself and the twins. Emma and Sophie have adapted to their new circumstances, though Jessica remains bitter about the changes in their lifestyle. She's never acknowledged that Maya's treatment was wrong. The extended family scattered like leaves in a storm. Some relatives moved away to escape the scandal. Others simply stopped speaking to anyone involved. Uncle Pete divorced his wife partially due to stress from the situation, and several other marriages strained under the financial pressures. I feel no guilt about these consequences. Adults who built their comfort on a foundation of child abuse earned every hardship that followed. Their loyalty was never to me or Maya. It was to a system that benefited them at our expense. The financial freedom from cutting off my family's support has been transformative. For the first time in years, I'm saving money for Maya's college fund instead of paying other people's bills. We moved to a better apartment in a more diverse neighborhood where Maya attends a school that celebrates her heritage. Maya has new friends from many different backgrounds, and she's learning that families come in all colors and traditions. She's taking swimming lessons, piano lessons, and art classes, activities I couldn't afford when I was supporting my entire extended family. Marcus's family has stepped in to fill the grandparent role with enthusiasm and genuine love. Carol and James treat Maya like the treasure she is, spoiling her appropriately and never suggesting that she should earn affection through service. Maya calls them Grandma Carol and Grandpa James. Some people say I should feel guilty about tearing apart my family, but I disagree. I didn't tear anything apart. I simply stopped holding together something that was fundamentally broken. The family structure that existed before was built on hierarchy, discrimination, and exploitation. Maya doesn't ask about her grandmother anymore, though she occasionally mentions missing Emma and Sophie. When she does, I remind her that we can't control other people's choices, but we can control how we respond to them. Today, as I watch Maya play in our living room, completely absorbed in building an elaborate castle with her blocks, I feel a peace I never experienced during the years I was trying to maintain relationships with people who saw her as less than. She's humming to herself, completely confident in her right to take up space. This is what I fought for. This moment of unguarded joy, this assumption of worth, this freedom from having to earn basic human dignity. Maya will grow up knowing that she deserves respect and opportunity, not because of what she does for others, but because of who she is. The fortress I've built around her isn't made of walls. It's made of love that teaches her she belongs in the world, exactly as she is.